This is Beyond Marie, and you're listening to Hoobazoo.com.
Good morning. Today is the first day of the rest of America's life. One day. One day that will, one way or another, change how this country feels about itself. One last push to get the train back on its tracks. One day that cannot wipe out the last 9 months or the last 4 years, but can clear a path for 1,000 better days ahead. One day, America on a tightrope. One day when the entire world is watching, like a parent in the stands, peeking through their fingers. Come on, America, come on. One day that will now play itself out right in front of our eyes, hour by hour, vote by vote, with history on its shoulders. One day that will change our lives forever. It is November 3rd, 2020, America. We have one day.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is a booth.
Staring down, looking at the blood-stained concrete. You're the dead MC, lying at my feet. You took a 9mm rhyme straight to your mind. Damn, my better split. This is my time, so I make my way up the block. Get to home base and lock that up. Crack the Cavassier and grab the phone. Call one of my troops up. Hope the soldiers homie says, yo, what's up, what's going on? Make it quick, cause I'm trying to get my Stella on. Nigga, your girl, I'm in the... These lyrical assassins tried to pull a hit, and then boom, came a noise from the other room. It was the boys in blue with the SWAT crew. They got us locked up for lyrical murder. It's one of them charges that you never heard of. It's the booth. The booth. The booth. The booth. Yeah, it's the booth. The booth. The booth. The booth. Yeah, we're killing all your podcasts like the HIV virus. You want to battle this kid? Huh, don't even try this. Back the up, think again, count to 10. You want to grab that mic just to get done in? It's the booth. The booth. The booth. The booth. Yeah, it's the booth. The booth. The booth. The booth. Yeah, it's the booth.
Was he African?
African.
No. He was American, and he was like you. He looked just like you.
He was Jewish.
Just like you.
Okay, Jew.
Hey.
It's an odd crime for a Jew to commit.
Yeah, I'm pretty docile.
Okay, so we have an African Jew wearing a hoodie.
No, you don't.
No.
No, that's not what I said. Is that what you heard me say? I said he looked like you. Do you look like an African Jew?
No, I look like a cop.
Yeah.
He was Caucasian.
All right, your boy Sinister One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are listening to The Booth, and I am joined here, as you can see already, by my guys, co-hosts Ken Diesel and Robert Resnick, R Squared. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello. Hello.
And I want to thank everybody for being here for election night. It is election night, November 3rd. As you can see, my background behind me says your vote. Your voice, your vote. As you can see, I'm just going to back up and go around here. Your voice, your vote. Behind me, I'm still learning which way to move when I'm on camera. I know I got to go the opposite way. Before I get into the show here, I just want to say what's up to Angela Henry, the Henry family whose son was Dan Roy Henry, DJ Henry, who was one of the first victims who brought light to the Black Lives Matter movement out of New York. He was a young man who played for Oliver Ames football. He had got a college scholarship, and there was an issue where he ended up at an altercation in a nightclub, and he thought that the officers who were in plain clothes were thugs, and they were actually police officers undercover, and he was shot and killed. His family did settle with the New York Police Department on this case. But just because they settled doesn't mean that you stop pushing the narrative of what they're doing. So it's a good cause. The DJ Henry Foundation has helped a lot of young kids be in youth sports. It's been a great thing. They put a lot of money up for kids to play football, Pop Warner football, to do horseback riding and things of such sort. Again, this is Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, and we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about. We came on an hour early just because we want to run the numbers. I've got MSNBC in the background here so we can pull up stuff once the numbers are going to come in. We're a little early, so it's 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. Most of the polls here on the East Coast don't close until 8 o'clock. We're not going to really start seeing any numbers until probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Down there in Florida, you said they close around 7 o'clock?
Yeah, you got states that are either 7 or 8, and then there are a couple that sneak it in at 7:30. There's one issue in North Carolina. They had a problem with some of the polling locations, so they're going to close 45 minutes late. So we will not get the numbers out of North Carolina until almost 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock tonight.
So we're going to make sure we got some stuff we're going to talk about. I'm kind of light on the topics to talk about tonight because I want us to keep an eye on the election. I know Rob has MSNBC on. I have MSNBC on in the background here on my computer. I'm pretty sure Ken is doing the same thing. Before we just went live, breaking news story. I'm going to just break this news story real quick. Isaiah Hall from the Miami Dolphins has been acquired by the New England Patriots in a trade. As we all know, the NFL trade deadline is today. I myself in the sports booth will be talking a little bit about my thoughts on that. Now, before we get into the show, I want to thank my special guest from last week, Matt Cameron of Matty C's Sports for You and Me, for coming on the show last week. But again, as you guys can see, this week on the show, my co-hosts today are Ken Diesel and R Squared. Both these guys very respected in both of their industries. Attorney Ken Diesenhof has been a defense attorney, a family practice lawyer. He's done stuff for immigration. Robert Resnick is a retired Army Colonel, JAG officer. He now teaches students. What school is it you teach at again?
Nova Southeastern University.
And, it's been a great time to have him on. And, there's a lot of things that we've been able to discuss on this show. So we're going to really bring it to you. So first thing I want to do is I want to get into the news booth. And in the news booth, people are torn up here and people were kind of upsetting me here because Governor Baker came out yesterday and he got tough on COVID. Here in Massachusetts, and it's actually not just Massachusetts, across the country, the numbers have climbed for COVID. The numbers are climbing, and we're back to what we were seeing in April, which was the bad numbers. These were the numbers before that whole big wave started where we had the massive shutdowns and hospitals were packed to capacity. The problem here is that we are now back to those numbers, and I understand it. I get why Governor Baker has put such strict... And I'm going to pull up I've got a picture here so you guys can see. Let me just mention my sponsor real quick. MDB Electronics. He fixes controllers. As you can see, his graphic is up there every week. And like I said, this week we've got a lot of important stuff to talk about. So if you want your controller fixed, please check out MDB Electronics. But here's the executive order. I wanted to get this up here real quick, and no disrespect to MDB Electronics. But the executive order stands as follows. 9:30 closures for the following: restaurant in-person dining, liquor stores and alcohol sales, movie theaters, which, to be honest, a lot of movie theaters hadn't even really reopened yet. Some of them opened when New Mutants opened up, so we haven't had really many of those open. Gyms were already operating at a short status capacity depending on the town that they was in, because if towns had entered back into the red, like Massachusetts, like Brockton and some of these other cities, they were already operating at a restricted time frame because they were back into the deep red and they had to roll back to step 1 of phase 3. So what has happened now is that a lot of people are calling Governor Baker and Mayor Marty Walsh, who's now signed off on this, and Mayor Sullivan here in Brockton. They're saying these guys are communists. They're trying to control the narrative, and it's not all politics, people. The reason why we're in this situation right now is because we've got people who are irresponsible, who don't want to follow the rules that were just set forth. And he said it best. Governor Baker said it best. If it wasn't for these college kids who are having parties on the weekends, no social distancing, drinking from kegs, and sharing red cups, you've had two stories here. Tony Arnold, who oversees Hoobazoo Network that we're on, Marlboro has now gone to full remote learning. Why? Because some parents decided to have a humongous high school party for the kids, no social distancing whatsoever, and put all the kids at risk. So now they had to shut the school system down. Everybody's back to remote learning, and the parents were charged for having this party, and they feel like, well, my rights are being stepped on. This is all politics. COVID's not real. COVID is very real, people. You talk to anybody who works in a hospital, COVID is very real. And the fact that people want to spin this and say that these governors who are trying to protect the city are being socialist or being, I don't know. I'm going to go with R Squared first. And the reason why I'm going to go with R Squared first on his thoughts on this, because Florida had seen a big spike, huge spike in the numbers. And early on, his governor down there, DeSantis, they didn't believe, he was a Trump guy, so they didn't believe any of this stuff. Everything was allowed to be open. Last week, you guys saw a clip that I showed from TLP called The Swamp, where FSU, Florida State, had this humongous game, and they told everybody to come to this game. They didn't care, and everybody came to the game, and after the game, they had like 16 players tested positive for COVID, a ton of people who were at the game. So I'm going to let R Squared, because Florida is, I would say, is probably one of the best examples of this.
Well, look, let's make something really clear to everybody. If people want to debate what are the necessary measures, about masks and distancing and what hours businesses can be open and all this, then that is a debate people can have. And there's not going to be 100% unanimity in people's thoughts on that. But to categorize what governors, and these are governors in both parties. This is not a party thing. You have Mike DeWine in Ohio, who's an absolute conservative. You've got Charlie Baker, a Republican in Massachusetts, as well as some of the Democrats, Cuomo and Gretchen Whitmer. And so this is not a party line thing. To say, these clowns that come on television and say that they have a right to do whatever they want, and these people are being authoritarians is the word you were looking for. They're calling them authoritarians and what have you. There's not even an iota of truth to that statement. So if they want to argue about masks and all the other remedies, then that's fine. Then let's have that argument. But at the end of the day, this is not a freedom issue. This is clearly within the authority. In fact, the very reason that we have government is for one reason only, and that is public safety. That is the legitimate, that is the basis for government at all levels that we have government. It is public safety. What is public safety about coronavirus? Well, it's pretty damn clear, right? And so this is not an abuse of power or an abuse of authority. So if we want to debate the specific rules, that's fine. For example, gyms closing early. People say, well, wait a minute. If you want people to spread out in gyms, shouldn't you have them open longer so that people can go at different times and not, and so that okay, so let's discuss, not right now, but I'm saying, so that's an issue to discuss, whether or not it's better to spread out the hours or not. Why do they want to close them early? Because they need to be cleaned thoroughly. And we're trying to get people back into their homes and minimize their time outside where they can come into contact with the virus and come into contact with other people. So there were all these arguments to have. So let's do it. And nobody's going to have a 100% perfect solution. But the bottom line is, the worse we let this get, the more austere, the more difficult it's going to be to fix it. So if we don't take steps now, we are going to have to go on a freaking lockdown where people can't leave their homes for a month. That's not what we want. So let's do the smart things now. Let's respect what governors in both parties and mayors in both parties across the country are trying to do. In fact, let's push them to do more so that we don't have to go to a complete lockdown. That's what we don't want.
Ken?
Absolutely. I agree with everything Rob said, but I will add one thing that I do not think has gotten a lot of play. In August, all of the scientists have been working on this program, from Dr. Fauci through the CDC, through the World Health Organization, said the same thing. We were going to see a spike in the fall. All the scientists predicted. So I don't know why everyone's getting all surprised that we're having more restrictions placed on when everybody knew this was going to happen. This was like the fall coming, The leaves turning and it getting colder and everyone getting surprised. It is because people are staying more indoors, which means they're staying a lot closer in contact and a lot means the disease can spread easier that way. This is not a political question. This is a scientific question. There is virtual agreement within the scientific community. Can't even speak. I haven't had anything to drink either. Rob's laughing at me about the preventive measures that are effective in combating this virus. Chief among them is social distancing, followed by masks, followed by limitations on large crowds, followed by cleaning every place you can do. And last but not least, if you're feeling under the weather, quarantine yourself. There is no debate about this. This is like debating whether the earth is round or whether it's flat, or whether the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. There's no debate on this anymore, people. The time for debating is done. How we implement those recommendations, as R Square said, is what we need to discuss. And I think there's a lot of room to talk about how we can function in a society which you can't shut down again. I don't think we can shut it down again for 4 or 5 months. It almost killed the economy the last time. I don't think we can survive it again. And I agree on those questions need to be asked. We also need to do a lot more with contact tracing, with identifying at-risk populations and at-risk circumstances. For example, since the one you brought up the fact that, one of the reasons we're having these super spreader events, like these college parties, like these political rallies, one of the areas that's very concerning, at least in my profession, is prisons. Mm-hmm. Bridgewater Addiction Facility recently had an outbreak where 17 staff members came down with COVID. We're now looking at that. Anytime you have a group of people who have compromised immune systems, and a lot of people in prisons do because they either are covering substance abusers, or they weren't in the greatest health to begin with, or they've got other health problems, are in a very confined environment where they can't practice social distancing, where they're not wearing masks a lot of times, where cleanliness is not a big thing. This is getting spread, which is in itself a problem. But remember, these are not closed environments. People are coming into that facility all the time. There are the prison guards, there are support staff, there are visitors, there are legal personnel like myself coming in contact. Most places have gone to call non-contact visits, although some, like Barnstable, they still have them. And I'm not exactly too thrilled with that, but I'm not going to argue with that. My client wants a contact visit. So this is going to, it's going to get bad again. And the only way we're going to get through this is if we follow the advice of the professionals and stop treating this like a political issue. The guys with the PhDs, the men and women with PhDs, MDs, aren't going around on a political agenda. Trust me, I know many of them. And many of them are severely to the right of me and Rob and Keith, and probably are severely right to former President George Walker Bush and Herman Walker Bush. So that, when they're telling you, hey, this isn't a political issue, it's scientific. And unfortunately, we've got some, I'll be polite, people of questionable intelligence launching into conspiracy theories. And I'll end with that.
Yeah, just one follow-up. I agree with everything you said, Ken. I just wanted to say one thing that I should have said earlier. For all the people that don't like these safety restrictions for the various reasons they have, whether it's because they don't like them, whether it's because it's interfering with going to work, or for the different reasons, kids being home from school, what have you. If we did the right thing in March and shut down for a month in March, we could have wiped this thing out or controlled it, where we could have gone back to something close to normal, and we'd be in a better position to deal with it now. The fact that we have never done the right thing, some states have while others didn't, means that now we've got this problem that we can't control. We don't have the ability because it's so widespread, and people have gotten so used to ignoring the safety restrictions and everything that now we're kind of stuck doing it half-assed, if I could say that, because the time has passed. It's too late to turn back the clock and do it the way we should have, like most of Europe did it, and we would have been in a much better. Yeah, it would have been a really bad month of March. I mean, no doubt about it, but it would have been done. and people would have been back to work and back to school and what have you. And now instead we've just been fooling around with it with half-assed measures, and now it's out of control, and we don't have the ability to do a lockdown because it probably wouldn't work. Or would have to be for such a long duration, as Ken said, that the economy would suffer to an extent that we don't want it to.
And the economy's already suffering, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because you said the same thing that Vianna Marie, the recording artist Vianna Marie, had said. She blames part of this on during the summer everybody became comfortable with the term new norm. And she said it should have never been the new norm. We should have attacked it just like you said. We should have just shut everything down for the 2 weeks and made sure it would have stayed down. When you put that new norm into place, people got complicit. And now we're seeing the effects of this, and we definitely can't shut down. As we pull up this next picture here into the news booth, IHOP and Applebee's are both on the chopping block here. Both of those companies were well-known big companies. They're shutting down. IHOP, I think, is closing like 100 locations. Applebee's is closing a ton. Friendly's, which is out of here in Massachusetts, they just announced that they're done. Friendly's is all done. They're a wrap. This weekend, Massachusetts got a big shock because Dunkin' Donuts was bought by Inspire, which is a group holdings company that owns Jimmy John's and Arby's and some other establishments, but they bought Dunkin' Donuts because Dunkin' Donuts have been closing some of their franchises for not having business, like the one over by the Brockton Courthouse. They're closed. There's a lot of locations that were by these places that were booming that are not doing nothing now, and they've closed down. So COVID has affected a lot, and we're coming into this so-called deadly third quarter, where we need Black Friday to be successful and things like that. And it's definitely something that we need to watch and look to, because we definitely don't want to head back into a shutdown. It would be the end of businesses as we know it. Not just small business, not just the middle business. We're talking big corporations. Thank God Best Buy is lucky enough to have the curbside pickup, and they're holding on, but at the end of the day, nobody is operating at the way that they should. And your remote learning in school, there's a lot of things there that keep things moving. I know here in Brockton, I don't know about in Florida, but in Brockton, in order to keep the food programs going here in Brockton for what they get for schooling, they have a pickup every day where parents can go and they pick up bundles of the breakfasts that the kids would get and the lunches that the kids would get. And I can tell you right now, we're happy to go down and get that stuff. It's free of charge, and it keeps people working, but it also aids and helps people, in the household with milk and cereal and things like that. Do they do that? Are they doing the same thing down in Florida too? Are they providing? Okay.
Yeah, the families that were relying on the school meal program are still relying on it, and they have the same thing. They line up with their cars and do pickups.
Yeah, see, so it helps out. So I know they're doing it out there in Melrose too. So this story about, I just mentioned, I'm just going to pop it up here, but yes, Dunkin' Donuts has been bought by Inspire for $11.3 billion. Dunkin' Donuts was making a major move across the country. A lot of people feel this is the death knell for Dunkin' Donuts. I doubt it. I have a feeling that the Inspire Corporation knows what they have in Dunkin' Donuts. I don't think Dunkin' Donuts is going anywhere. I think they keep that name. I think they just add it to one of the companies that they oversee. And that's my opinion there. Ken, you're a business guy like me. Your thoughts? You think they're just going to keep that Dunkin' Donuts name and run it along?
Absolutely. I think Dunkin' Donuts has got such brand recognition across the country. I don't think it's going anyplace. I think they got a really good price because of COVID, and they've taken a hit. And I think you're going to see some contraction of certain franchisees. But here's the thing: I thought Dunkin' Donuts overexpanded the last couple of years.
That's exactly right.
I think this contraction was inevitable. I think COVID just came over and just put it, cranked it up to 11, as we used to say back in the day. But no, Dunkin' Donuts isn't going anyplace. They are well established. I mean, even people outside of New England. I remember years ago, and I'm talking about the 70s and 80s, when Dunkin' Donuts was strictly a New England thing. We in New Jersey knew who they were.
Right.
And that was 30, 40 years ago. Now they're international. They're in air. Well, the most important thing is they're in airports. You can't go to
Yes.
any major airport in the United States right now and not find a small Dunkin' Donuts kiosk. And so that's, I think, a good indication. Don't worry, you'll be able to get your Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I'm not a big coffee person, but I understand people love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I'm personally the donuts made me who I am, for good or bad.
The oat milk, they started using oat milk now with the coffee, and I switched from my skim milk to oat milk. I was actually doing almond milk. I'm a big fan of almond milk, but now this oat milk has come out, and I really like the taste of oat milk. It's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit creamier, but it's much healthier for me. And I got to give a big shout out to my brother who just got out the hospital.
Great.
We have to take, me and my brother, I'm the older of the two, but we do have to take care of ourselves and look into our health issues.
Oh, absolutely.
Diabetes is big in our family, so we got to make sure we take care of ourselves. So I've switched to oat milk, and I like the taste of oat milk. But this Dunkin' Donuts thing, yeah, I agree. And to be honest, when you talked about their expansion and buying too many and expanding too much, I felt like that was already the sign of them trying to boost up to get bought. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of felt that.
Yeah, well, that's not a lot of companies do that. If they can increase their sales. Now, here's the important thing: that when you look at a balance sheet, there are a couple of things you need to look at. You need to look at gross sales. More importantly, you need to look at the profit to debt ratio and the debt to equity ratio. And those are the important things. And that's where Dunkin' Donuts is getting a lot of problems. They're taking on a lot of debt, which I don't think was particularly healthy. If we didn't have COVID, they probably would have been in a better place. But when COVID hit, oh my God, that just took a bite out of them.
Did they get down to Florida yet? I know they were making their way down south. Krispy Kreme had a big hole down south.
Dunkin's has been here for a long time, and this is one of the areas where they overexpanded. For example, I recently moved just a few miles away from where I was. I'm no longer downtown in Delray Beach, but where I was in April, when I left there in April, there were 3 Dunkin' Donuts walking distance to me. That's too many. Okay, that's just too many. It's nice to be able to walk to 1. I certainly didn't need to be able to walk to 3. And that's just an indication that they were expanding too many. They just had too many locations that were too close together. And that means not only are they competing with Starbucks or whomever else, but they were competing with themselves. And when you start doing that, it's a disaster. And so they may not have been over expanding in Massachusetts because they already had a firm place there. They're competing with Cumberland Farms, I believe, but they've got a firm place in the market there. But in places where they were expanding, they were getting too many new locations.
Yeah, like I said, and I wish them luck. I don't think they're going anywhere. That Dunkin' Donut brand name is just too big. I think it's just going to be another company that they're going to add to their portfolio. Moving on into the news booth, Brockton's own Sabrina Victor, I got to mention, she is Miss Massachusetts. But the reason why I'm mentioning her is that she's now a finalist in the Miss USA pageant. So if you can, Brockton could end up having their first Miss USA to add to the Brockton City resume. So you want to go to the Miss USA website, check out Sabrina Victor, and make sure you vote for her. And this new way of voting for people in the Miss USA universe, I guess you can pay now to buy a certain amount of votes. I don't like that because somebody that has severe financial backing is going to go deep in these tournaments.
How the hell is that relevant?
Yeah, I don't get that. That's this new way of what they do now with these pageants and stuff. If somebody has a sponsorship deal already locked in, that sponsor is going to pay. So again,
folks, we're talking about a beauty pageant here, and you're railing against corruption. The entire concept is corrupt. I mean, wake up, people.
So before I get into the entertainment booth, one of the things I got to ask, since I got you guys on, I didn't have you guys on last week, so I didn't have your legal expertise. Last week, I talked on this show about Purdue Pharma pleading guilty to 3 criminal counts, federal charges, by the way, in relation to their $8 billion settlement. I got to go around the horn here and ask you guys, because one of the things that Purdue Pharma has already done, they filed for bankruptcy, which means anybody who's going to have a potential lawsuit against them probably won't get squat. And the fact that they filed for bankruptcy, how does that affect this criminal count case as far as a federal charge go? I'm going to start with Ken first.
Well, it's a very interesting point that you raise. Criminal counts are not affected by bankruptcy. You
Okay.
can't go into bankruptcy court under most circumstances. There are a few limited circumstances where the fine can be stayed or reduced, but generally speaking, you get caught, you get a criminal, you're stuck with that. Bankruptcy won't help you. What's really interesting, because if you look at what they pled to, in addition to pleading guilty, they also pled guilty to market manipulation, which included a threat, because you know after the bankruptcy reform relief, I think it was 2006, they did not. You can no longer use bankruptcy as an offensive weapon. It's one of the few things. Although it's almost never enforced, but I think it's going to be enforced now. So a lot of those lawsuits could have some teeth. Granted, the federal government's going to have the first bite at the apple, but the Purdue family is not walking away with money. They're done. They're going to be out on the street, and it's going to be great. I'm so happy about that.
Squid, jail time, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Ken's absolutely right on the bankruptcy stuff. I have nothing to add to that. But here's the problem. They need to get some forensic accounting, I mean high-powered forensic accounting in there, because the Sackler family has been funneling away billions and billions of dollars to themselves, and they need to be able to trace exactly the sources of that money, because they weren't doing it all legitimately. I mean, just the nature of the beast. They were paying themselves salaries that would be ridiculous, so that can be traced because it comes directly from the corporation that they had, the family business. But they were also funneling other money into their own interests, and so that money does not exist under the corporation to be able to pay the judgments or anything else. And so part of the bankruptcy, and even outside of the bankruptcy, they're going to need to trace that money and use it's going to require legal action, but they're going to have to get it back. And that they're hiding it, right? It doesn't exist in the United States anymore. And so that's going to be the most complicated aspect of this right now, is getting all that money back. Ken said it would be really good to see them out on the street. I agree. They deserve it. They're an evil family for what they did, but they're also incredibly clever in how they hid their assets. So I'm not an expert in this, and I certainly don't know what they have, but I know it's going to take a huge effort to trace that money and get it back.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the important thing people don't understand about bankruptcy. There's something called the clawback provision, and that allows the bankruptcy court to claw back assets that have been distributed even to third parties if they fall within a certain time of the bankruptcy. And I've got a feeling that there are a lot of people out there, as Rob said, with forensic talent. They're already looking for the money if they don't already know where it is. And the other important thing is people forget that when you do a plea agreement, if you violate the plea agreement, the government come and said, well, you violated the plea agreement, so guess what? We're revoking the deal, and everything you agreed to, everything you admitted, we can use that at trial against you. Now, I haven't read the plea agreement, but I got to believe that the prosecutors did put clause in there that they got to come forward with where that money went. And if they didn't, they'd be idiots. And the U.S. Attorney's Office may be a lot of things, but they're not idiots.
So do you guys think they will actually see any jail time, or do you? I mean, because most of the times people in this situation, most of these company execs, these CEOs, they usually never see much jail time. They usually get a slap on the wrist. But this case here is humongous. The world is watching this case.
No, they're not going to see jail. I don't think they'll see jail time unless this is the one caveat I said. If the government can establish they lied during the plea agreement, then yeah. And that's going to be the thing, is because, as Rob pointed out, a lot of that money has gone into secret Swiss bank accounts, accounts in the Caymans. If the government can establish they did that, then yeah, there could possibly be jail time.
Anything to add to that, Oswith?
No, I agree. I think that cases like this, you're going to see, as part of criminal justice reform overall, you're going to see more emphasis on these type of prosecutions, white-collar crime, corporate embezzlement, that type of thing. Now, the whole reason to enter into a plea agreement would be to take incarceration off the table and just focus on fines and other things. So my guess is that they may avoid jail time, absent what Ken said, where they can get additional charges for hiding the money. But, I think we need to start seeing some amount of jail time in these cases. I don't know that this will be the one, but they deserve it.
Right. I couldn't agree with Rob more. I mean, if it was up to me, I would they would not see the light of day ever again. They'd get a life imprisonment for every life that that OD'd because of their drug.
All right, I just got an alert. I just got an alert that some of the polls across the country are starting to close. We're at 6:30, so maybe once we see some numbers, we'll break away. So we're just going to keep.
I don't think anybody closes before 7.
Yeah, I just got an alert. Said they're getting ready to wrap up. So that's
well, within a half hour. Yeah, Massachusetts closes at 7:00, not 8.
Yeah. So we're here. We're here live tonight. Broadcasting live. Well, usually Tuesday we do a show anyway. Moving on to the entertainment booth. Man, this has been a year. Eddie Van Halen. It's man, it's like my childhood has come to rest. It's crazy. Sean Connery, best known for being James Bond, and many other roles. He was Harrison's Ford dad in the Indiana Jones series. Great role for him. The funny thing is, even though I love Sean Connery for his role as James Bond and some of these other movies, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, one of the most significant, and this is weird because it was a bad casting for this movie. He played a character that was completely outside of what he was. But the movie Untouchables, that character Sean Connery played as the Irish police officer in New York in Chicago during the Prohibition.
Chicago.
That role, he took that role, even though he's a Scottish guy, he took that role and he killed it. When he got shot and Kevin Costner's holding him in his apartment, man, my eyes welled up. And I was like, this is the role. Of all the James Bond movies I saw, you would think I would say James Bond stuck with me, but no. That role in that film is what really stuck with me with Sean Connery. He played his ass off in that role.
James Bond are not Oscar nominating type roles. They're just fun movies. But, this was a movie that did come up for some Oscars. He won it for that and he deserved it that year. I think a lot of people, even if they don't remember the name of the character, remember the famous line, which was, correct me if I get this wrong, Ken, on the numbers, but it was, they put one of yours in the hospital, you put 3 of theirs in the morgue. I mean, people remember that line. It's classic.
Oh yeah. Well, no. What it is it's like they pull a knife, you pull a gun. They put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the morgue.
Okay, I thought it was 3, but okay, yeah.
Yeah. That's the Chicago way. Yeah. Oh, please. The Untouchables movie, and here's the thing. You guys know I'm a huge history geek. And American crime history is a big thing. And the Untouchables is such a fabrication about how they got Al Capone. It doesn't even come close. That being said, I'm a huge fan of that movie. I love that movie, and it's
great movie.
And it's a great popcorn movie. As long as you don't understand, that's not history. I
What's
thought
it supposed
that
to be?
Robert De Niro as Al Capone. I think he nailed it. I like the way he did it. The guy, Kevin Costner, was okay. I thought he was good, not great, but I agree with you. Sean Connery was awesome. The guy who plays
Andy Garcia played a good role in that film.
I know Andy Garcia was fantastic. I loved it. I thought it was great. I just love that movie tremendously. And there's another great popcorn movie that Sean Connery was in, and you're gonna laugh at me because I know Rob, especially because Rob probably hates this movie because he's going to tear apart the military aspects, and that is The Rock.
I loved it.
Oh, you loved it? I was about to say it's right. There were so many great lines in that, and because he plays against type. He plays an ex-SAS officer who's in an MI6, and there's one great line where Nicolas Cage moves out his credentials and said, "This is why," and Sean Connery goes, "I can't read that. I don't have my glasses." I was laughing my.
He was very funny in that role. Very funny.
He was awesome. Great. He was great in that role, and I always remember. And there's this great scene. The one thing that I absolutely love when the SEAL team gets on in there, and they're behind this locked door, and the only way they can get through is there's this basically this hole where there's this flames keep coming up, and Sean Connery's got to go roll over the flames in a certain way and then unlock the door from the inside. and you see him do it, and all of a sudden you hear this door, and you hear Sean Connery come, and he goes, "Welcome to the Rock," and you hear all the music, and the guys go charging in. I love that movie.
Great story about that is that when that movie was being filmed, that was one of Disney's first forays into action films, and that was one of Michael Bay's first action films out the gate. And they at that time they weren't really knowing what they had in Michael Bay, and Michael Bay was kind of going over the budget, and it was Sean Connery who turned to Disney and told them, "Hey, give him the effing money to finish this film." Because they were about to shut it down. And it's funny, I heard that story about Sean Connery, and then this weekend on Disney Plus, I watched The Empire of Three, which was a documentary about George Lucas and the making of the 3 Star Wars films, and how much money he had went over for that first Star Wars film, and how Fox was ready to shut this down at the very last second. They were going to shut the film down because he was over. But Alan Ladd, who was the head of Fox at that time, stuck by him and gave him a tip and said, "Hey, you need to get this movie done in a week because they're coming to shut it down." And he had to. And here's the great thing: I'm a union guy. I believe in unions, but if unions were on the set of the film Star Wars would have never been made, because Star Wars was made because a ton of people overcrossed their jobs. The carpentry guys worked with the electricians on certain jobs. And it was great to hear this story that, they crossed those union boundaries, or this film probably would have never been made. But if you haven't checked it out, Empire of 3, it's on Disney Plus. It is a great documentary. And again, rest in peace, Sean Connery, 90 years old.
Yeah, but there's one thing I want to add. Excuse me, Rob. There's one movie that unfortunately, which I loved, and I think it's one of the greatest Sean Connery movies that you've probably never seen. It's called The Anthill. It's a black and white movie from his earlier in his career. It's a very young Sean Connery when he actually had all his hair, before he started losing his hair. Mm-hmm. And you haven't seen it, my recommendation is go out and see it. It's about Sean Connery plays a disgraced sergeant major in a prison camp in a British disciplinary barracks, as they call it. They don't call it a prison camp. And it's just a great film. So I'm sorry, Rob, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to ask, since we're all talking about, Bond, and Connery was the best Bond.
Yes, hands down.
He had I think 8 Bonds. Which Connery Bond was your favorite? Which
Diamonds
Bond
Are Forever.
He was in?
Diamonds Are Forever.
Is that the one with
Mr. Quick? Yeah, Mr. Quick and Mr. What's his name? That's
Mr. Wendt.
Yes. Yep. That was the
good
Aston
movie,
Martin.
But oh god. Yeah, what was the one that was set in Japan?
With Sean Connery?
Yeah, he there was Spectre. They had their.
You had Thunderball. You had Live and Let Die. You had Dr. No. Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Dr. No was
the first. Was on the islands. Thunderball was also in the islands. Live and Let Die. I thought Live and Let Die was a Roger Moore film.
Live and Let Die was that was in Manhattan. That was in the Bronx and stuff. That was
that was
Kananga.
Roger Moore.
That was
Roger Moore. That was Roger Moore. But there was the one in Japan where Donald Pleasance played Blofeld.
Blofeld. Yeah. He played Agent Blofeld.
Yeah,
that wasn't Thunderball, was it?
I can't.
Goldfinger?
No, it wasn't Goldfinger. Goldfinger was not Rocky off Fort Knox.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where they went to Japan. God, I don't remember that.
They did. You couldn't make it today. It's incredibly misogynistic. Let me tell you, it's incredibly misogynistic.
A lot of the older James Bond movies were couldn't make.
But this one was way out. This one was.
We've got a lot of people in chat. Go ahead. Finish.
There's one great scene where Bond's going to meet his contact, and it's the actor who plays his contact actually played Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever. Mm-hmm. And there's this great scene where Bond, the guy's lost his leg in the World War II, and Bond hits the guy to make sure it's the guy. The guy goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you got it right." Lost that in Singapore in 1942. It was just so British. It's like, oh, glad you got it right. And he goes, it's like, oh, I got this from the doorman because the character's making Bond a vodka martini. And he goes, oh, Russian vodka. Yes, I got it from the doorman at the Russian embassy, among other things. And he's just great subtle lines in that movie. I absolutely just love that movie. Like, all right, now I got to go Google it. I got to go figure out.
Go ahead, Google it. I got to thank a lot of people in the chat. Angela Samita, thanks for showing up in the chat. Tyler Zanowski for showing up in the chat. Johnny Dolan, what's going on in the chat? Elias Pitts, a friend of my, he's one of my son's best friends, Elias Pitts. What's going on? Mario Vargas, we went to school together. What's going on in the chat? And again, rest in peace to, one of the best. Sean Connery, James Bond, 90 years old.
You only live twice. That was the.
You only live.
Twice. Yeah.
You only live twice. Well, I think
was that the lady with the? Was that the one with the lady with the shoes with the knives? Was she in that one? That fight?
No, that's from Russia with Love.
Okay,
that's from Russia with Love, which is also another great. From Russia with Love, there's also another great one. No question about it.
Best fight scene was Sean Connery and Robert Shaw. I believe that was
from Russia with Love. Yes, absolutely. What was Robert Shaw? I thought Robert Shaw played, although the hairstyle they gave him didn't, the blonde hair really didn't work. But yes, From Russia with Love is probably my second. You only live twice. My first. From Russia with Love is probably my second, and Goldfinger's close third.
When you think about it, he had
no,
the Mike
Mr.
Pence.
Bond, I expect you to die.
When you think about it, though, when you go back and think about that Robert Shaw haircut, he had the Mike Pence special.
Oh God, you're right. Oh my God.
He had the Mike Pence special. That's what Mike Pence is rocking. That Robert Shaw.
Oh God, I'm never gonna be able to see that again. Every time I watch that movie, every time I watch that movie now, I'm gonna see Mike Pence on Robert Shaw's body. Thank you very much.
Mike Pence, Robert Shaw. Yep, there we go. Moving on in the entertainment booth. I'm calling this the lean party as we are now counting votes in the next half hour. Lil Wayne and Lil Pump, rappers who show their support for President Trump in the final weekend before the election. Lil Pump was actually in Michigan last night, and he invited Lil Pump on the stage, and then he incorrectly called him Little Pimp, which should have stuck out to people by calling him Little Pimp. I'm like, here we go again. But the thing is that a lot of people in the black community are very upset with Lil Wayne for taking pictures. But the thing is Lil Wayne, look, people, this is a rapper who was on tour with Blink-182, a rock band. He was also on tour with Fall Out Boy. So when he goes and he backs Donald Trump, part of me feels like that this is a marketing tool because he knows that his base, his fan base, are those rich white kids who show up to these festival shows that he does with these groups across the country, and he has to, unfortunately, pander to his fan base because they're the ones that show up at his shows. A lot of the black community people are not showing up at some of these festival shows where they have all these rock bands and things like that. So it doesn't surprise me that Lil Wayne is backing Donald Trump. It doesn't surprise me that Lil Wayne was bad-mouthing BLM because he's a skateboarder. He's that type of kid. So people, when you don't rip somebody apart, if you pay attention to what they do in their lives before, it drives me crazy just because some of these.
Wasn't he on The Apprentice? I mean, there's a connection there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. So it's pretty funny stuff. So moving on into the sports booth, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we had Isaiah Hall from the Miami Dolphins has just been traded to the Patriots. The question is if he passes his physical and stuff, will he play this weekend? I don't know. We'll see. But also in the sports booth, I got to mention Uriah Hall defeated Anderson Silva in the 4th round with a KO. Anderson Silva, to me, was the gatekeeper. For me, it's time for him to retire. Uriah Hall, let's see where this goes. Also in the sports booth, former intelligence director Dan Coates calls Russia, when it comes to hacking, he has called Russia the New England Patriots of election meddling, which I found to be, it's pretty bad when the former director of intelligence is mentioning Patriots in a quote about the Russian hacking. Squid, you're laughing over there. You find that pretty amusing?
I mean, it's just kind of folksy coming from Dan Coates. It's kind of funny, and I don't know. You know what? I'll tell you what it brought to my mind. I don't know if anybody watched the Fox cartoon premiere Sunday night. But on the Family Guy, you know how they do cutaways with just, some. So they made fun of Robert Kraft's prostitution thing from down here in one of the cutaways. I don't know if you saw it. I won't ruin it, but it was very funny. It was really funny. And I couldn't believe that they went there, quite frankly.
Can you mention it on air?
Oh, I can, but
go for it. Go for it. I want to hear it.
It had to do with Peter and Lois were doing something, and they were trying to have sex. And they kept getting caught, so they had to go someplace else. And anyway, the term, they were trying to do like a double entendre where, it was like something like tug it kind of thing, And so all of a sudden the door opens, Robert Kraft walks in, the animated version of Robert Kraft walks in. And Peter says, "Oh, look, it's New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft," as if people wouldn't know who it was, right? And Kraft says something about, give it a good tug or something, it was basically an admission like of what he got caught doing in the seedy strip mall here. So it was just funny that they went there, that's all. They just think there's nothing sacred for that show. And it was, it wasn't
for
bad
God's
taste, but it was funny.
Oh,
it was
man.
funny.
We got more people in the chat. How's it going, Tommy McGinty? What's up? Deb Oren is actually in here watching with us. Frank Zanowski, Z-Man. What's going on with Z-Man? I got something I got to speak with him about. We got this one chip challenge coming up soon that I got to try to get him on here. So that was moving on into the sports booth. This past weekend, man, Patriots lose again, 4 losses in a row. Cam Newton, this is the second time he has the ball in his hands to try to win the game for the Patriots. He puts the ball in what he says is his uncomfortable hand and gets it knocked out and ends up fumbling the ball away. Pats lose the game to the Bills. The Bills are staying atop the AFC East, and it's now 4 losses in a row. Everybody in Boston and Massachusetts is losing their mind at the end of the world. Tampa Bay turns around and has a great game against the Giants last night on Monday Night Football and pulls it out in Brady fashion yet again over those Giants.
Cheaters.
Go ahead. I'll let you talk about it. They played your Giants last night. What do you got to say?
Oh, come on. That's just sour grapes.
It's called the Brady rules. Here's the thing. There was all season long there have been some questionable calls. There were some really bad calls last night. All went against the Giants. All went in favor of Tom Brady. And here's the thing. So, I didn't think the Giants had a chance of winning that game. Before the game started, there was no way the Giants were going to even be competitive because I said, and I reminded Ken of this yesterday, that if you guys made fun of me in the preseason, I said Tampa Bay was going to be one of the contenders this year. And so I have a lot of respect for what that team did. But when I saw that the Giants were actually giving them a hell of a game, it's like, come on, don't let it come down to some bad calls like that at the end. The Giants they should have, that game should have been tied up and at least gone into overtime, if not a Giants win at the end of the game. And I just would have liked to see the players finish it on the field. That's all. That's all I'm saying. It may have been that Tampa Bay killed them in overtime because the Giants don't have the stamina on defense to stop them anymore. And so I wouldn't have bet any money. Even if it got to overtime, I wouldn't have bet any money that the Giants would have won that game, except for the fact that they had it. And they outplayed Tampa for most of that game. They just didn't get the points on the board. So it's just a shame they're having such a bad season. This would have been something great for them. It isn't going to matter. They're not going to be in the playoffs, but it would have been nice to have a couple of quality wins this season and, try to build off of that. They don't have Saquon Barkley, but the team is trying. They're trying. So
Ken,
I don't know. It was just unfortunate.
You're not tubing over there on Zoom, are you?
No. I just have CNN on the background.
Okay, you're off camera there. You had me worried for a second.
No, I wasn't camera. Pulling the guy from the New Yorker routine.
Thought you might have had something else open on another browser over there.
No. I have seen on the background, and apparently, based on the votes being counted out of Kentucky, Biden is ahead by 1,200 votes in Kentucky.
Keep us updated because I'm going to keep doing what we're doing here before we get into this.
And it looks like Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia closed in. The polls will close there in 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, so we should start getting hot and heavy just in time because right now we're entering. Wow. We are entering what has been one of the most successful segments ever in the history of the booth. and that would be Trump Troubles. This is a segment that we came up with into Donald Trump's first term as president. We came up with this Trump Troubles, and it wasn't everything that he did bad. It was things that he might have done good that was bad for others. So it's kind of like a double entendre. And you know what? We're 4 years into this, and I get tired of explaining this to people whenever they come at us on our booth Facebook page and things like that. It's just crazy. But this is it, people. This is election night, and whichever way this goes, it's either going to end next week, will be the last Trump trouble next week, or we may have another 4 years of Trump troubles. We'll see. But
you have a couple more months no matter what. So
yeah, that's exactly true. That's true. Yes, we do have a couple of more months. You know, we probably
and knowing Donald Trump, he will take full advantage.
We'll see.
He will be the most spiteful. You know, if he loses tonight, or whenever the answer comes in, he will be the most spiteful, outgoing president we've ever had. Every other president was graceful, no matter how tough the election. Everybody else was graceful as far as trying to do a transition and do the right thing. This guy won't. You just know he won't.
Right. Now, Ken's walking. That was pretty weird. Ken just walked away. Frank Zanowski says, of course, Frank says, of course. Ken is watching CNN. Going back into the sports booth, I forgot to mention breaking news at the top of the show. Broncos John Elway, president, and Joe Ellis have tested positive for COVID-19 down there, the Denver Broncos. So, you know, prayers go out to those guys. Right now, neither of them are showing symptoms. But like we talked about in this show last week, me and Matt Cameron, is that COVID is going to be that unforeseen X factor heading into the season. That, you know, you would hate to see a team like Seattle or Pittsburgh have a COVID outbreak like week 14 or week 15, because that will change the whole dynamic of the season. We just saw Trevor Lawrence had to sit out this game against Boston College, and Boston College, they took it to him. They almost beat a Clemson team without Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence wasn't there, and that could have been costly. If they had dropped that game to BC, that could have cost them in those standings. As far as Trevor Lawrence goes, I started my clap for Trevor Lawrence again, because originally he had said that, you know, when the rumors were out there that the Jets might be drafting him, he said that he was going to stay another year in school. But now there's a lot of other rumors that other teams may be looking for him, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he has announced that he's probably going to make himself eligible for the draft. And having my experience with drafts over the years on different shows and things like that, it's not out of the realm of possibility right now with the Patriots on a 4-game losing streak. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that they play the Jets this weekend. They may lose to the Jets this weekend. If they lose to the Jets this weekend, now the race is on for the worst record in the AFC East, and it puts the Patriots in a good chance to make some moves in the draft for maybe a Trevor Lawrence, or maybe, I forget the gentleman out of OSU, out of Ohio State, Josh, I forget his last name, but it does put them in a position to get what they need to get, and that is a quarterback. They're well under the cap. They've got a ton of cap money here in New England. Gilmore put his house for sale. I was expecting Gilmore to be on the trading block today. The day is almost over. We haven't heard them trade Stephon Gilmore away yet, so we'll see. But I felt like Stephon Gilmore was a first-round draft pick. I felt he was worthy of a first-round draft pick. But we'll see. We'll see. The day is almost done. So we're going to move in to Trump Troubles, which I said this is it. This could be it for Trump Troubles. If he loses this re-election bid, we'll probably see a couple of months more. But some of the things I want to point out that happened over the weekend that upset me, and people, it defines the hypocrisy of what Donald Trump has created in the 4 years of his presidency. We have this veil of hypocrisy amongst friends and family and people we don't know, and with between parties, that is just blatant, ignorant hypocrisy. For example, this past weekend, in 4 different states, Trump supporters jammed the highways, and in some cases, they clogged them on purpose to hold them up to show their support of Donald Trump's reelection. Now, I found this to be highly ignorant and highly hypocritical, because a big percentage of these people who clog the highways and supported Trump were the same guys that would sit next to you in the restaurant with your mask on and complain when they saw BLM or protesters on the highways in Michigan and stuff and said, if that was me, I'd run them over. But it's okay to do this now. And this is the hypocrisy that drives me up an effing wall with this whole situation and what we have and the reason why I voted the way I voted. Guys, your thoughts, Ken, on this? The hypocrisy is one of the things that has gone on in these 4 years.
Absolutely. And this, it's beyond mind-boggling. Every time I think they can't go any lower, the old joke is every time I think someone hits rock bottom, somebody breaks out a shovel and starts to dig. Absolutely. If you remember a couple of years ago, a number of protesters blocked I-93. Mm-hmm. And I remember the people and I was one of them. I thought that was a stupid stunt, by the way. And I use that road to commute every day. And luckily for every day I wasn't going in. I was ready to kill them. Everybody in Massachusetts, they didn't care what you're protesting about. You don't go on the Mova Highway and block a highway. And I agree. The same people are going, oh, this is great. No. It shows that these people don't believe in the rule of law. They believe in whatever is good for them is okay. But if you do it, then it's not okay. But this shows you what Trump is. Trump is, a man baby. I'll give the example. I have two nephews, and when they were younger, I used to babysit for them. And every time I used to babysit for them, they would never, ever stop trying to get ice cream and cake for breakfast. And how many times I tried to use logical arguments that you can't have ice cream and cake, they would still ask for it. And eventually I had to tell them the reason you're not getting ice cream and cake is your mother would kill me. And I'm more scared of her than I am of you. And that shut them up for 30 seconds. And then they asked me again for ice cream and cake. And that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing here with children. Grown up, 40-year-old, 5-year-olds. And if we try to use logic, you're going to go crazy.
South Carolina right now, they're talking about South Carolina is too early to call, which you guys know that is
everything is too early to call.
It's going to be Trump too early to call right now.
Yeah, so they're giving Indiana to Trump, but too early to call in Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. Georgia and South Carolina, the fact that he is not walking away from those two states, that's a shocker right there.
Well, Georgia was expected to be an issue. South Carolina, is going Trump. It's just they just don't have the numbers in yet. That's all. Right. It doesn't mean that it's too close. It means they just don't have the numbers.
And going back to the clogging of the highways and the hypocrisy of this, the question I'm going to throw the R-squared's way that happened this weekend, happened actually on Friday, which disgusts me. And it disgusts me that Biden supporters, not Biden supporters, but Trump supporters actually applauded this. And Trump himself said, this is the good people of Texas. Another gentleman got up there representing Florida and said that we do this in Florida all the time. And I felt like that was disgusting. And I'm talking about the hypocrisy of the fact that these Texas Trump supporters chased down Biden's bus in Texas and pretty much almost ran it off the road with their flags and all this stuff. And you've got some people, and you've been very vocal on this, R-Squid. So I'm going to let you, I saved this one for you. People feel like that this is a terrorist act. They felt that Americans doing something like this, it's a terrorist act. Every car in that video should be charged for some type of... I'm going to let you, because like I said, you're a JAG officer. You've spent a lot of time military in the courtroom. Your thoughts on this one? This is a presidential, candidate who's this should not happen. I'm going to let you speak on it. You saw the video, correct?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Look,
okay. All right.
It's completely unacceptable. This has never happened before. We have never seen politics denigrate to that level. But you know what? This isn't even politics. The people behind this were not your regular Republican voters that, maybe are your neighbors or your coworkers or people that you've known for half your life. These were terrorist groups. They are terrorist groups. Let's use the word that they are. You can put whatever militia name they give themselves. They're not militias. They just use that name. They are not militias under the definition of that term. But what they are terrorist groups. And we've talked about this on the show multiple times. That is what they are. It is the most appropriate label. It describes who they are and what they believe and what their actions are. And it's one thing if they want to have a little fun and, drive by with their flags and beep their horns a little bit. That could be good-natured fun, right? But what they did was they tried to run the bus off the road. That could be potentially lethal to people. They also made it stop so that it couldn't go to where it was trying to go. So they exceeded anything that you could possibly think was remotely okay. It was not. And so what they did was, yes, it was clearly a crime. It could be, depending on, the state law that's at play. There are multiple things that it possibly could be. I won't speculate what charges they're going to consider. It absolutely should be prosecuted. They should be able to get the license plates of every car that participated in that. And everybody needs to be charged as a member of the conspiracy to, it could be voter suppression. It could be an assault. It could be, several different things, but this is inexcusable. And that this is not just somebody got carried away. This is a terrorist act. This was a criminal act. And there's just nothing else to say about it.
And I've just actually switched over to MSNBC as some of the numbers are coming in. Looks like Trump has been the projected winner of Indiana. Kentucky is not called yet. Right now, they've got it. Biden 0, Trump 11 as far as these numbers that are coming in. So I've got MSNBC on. I'm going to switch back and forth from time to time so you guys can see what's going on here.
They all break at the same time.
Yeah, they're breaking down Georgia. It's still early here to bring that in, so we're going to go back and kind of finish out our show so we can really get into these numbers. Florida, okay, we'll stick with Florida right now. Florida, they're showing right now 29 electoral votes. Trump is ahead 52.4% to 46.7%, courtesy of MSNBC. McConnell and McGrath in Kentucky are dead heat.
Yeah, but Florida, remember, that's only counting live votes. So you have not counted the voting early, and that's the important thing. That'll be counted later in the evening.
Correct, which is what they were saying. So we want to make sure, Tom McGinty, morons, they're effing morons. I'm sure he's talking about the topic we were just talking about with running the bus off the road. I like I said, I don't know how anybody could justify it. I was like, are you kidding me? There's no justification for this. There's no way to justify this. And if the cops had pulled up, if the state troopers or Texas Rangers had pulled up and shot these guys, they would have had rightfully just reason to do so. So moving on to Trump troubles. Cue the trumpets, the American crickets, as this whole fake persona and company laid the groundwork for this Hunter Biden conspiracy story with the laptop. Now, a lot of this laptop story is based on some of the stuff that, and people were making like we knew a lot of stuff. A lot of this stuff came from the hearings that we had heard months and months ago. So a lot of this story is built off of the things that we heard. At this time, nothing has been proven out of this story. Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon and Trump said, oh, there's a lot more to come out of this laptop. And we haven't heard nothing at all, other than the facts that point to that this whole story is pretty much a farce. There's a reason why the FBI had this laptop in their so-called possession for the last year and a half. There's a reason why the New York Post reporters didn't want their names attached to the story at all, yet the New York Post, which endorsed Donald Trump, attached these people's names without there. I'm going to let R Squared, you were really up to tune on this story. I'm going to let you talk about this and this fake persona and stuff.
Yeah, these allegations were nothing new. They've been playing with these for a while. And, the farce of a Senate hearing run by Senator Johnson of Wisconsin, the chairman of the Homeland Security Office Committee, this is what they were wasting their time on instead of all the legitimate issues that they need to be addressing in this country. But even that sham of a hearing concluded that there was no evidence of any of this stuff. So the Republicans in the Senate even concluded there's nothing to, that these were just baseless allegations, baseless rumors, no facts to support them. Nevertheless, the Trump strategy is the truth doesn't matter. You just keep repeating these fake stories. This is the whole Roy Cohn thing that people keep talking about. His father's lawyer and the famous, sort of political operative lawyer from the McCarthy hearings and what have you. Roy Cohn is a despicable individual. But, this was his strategy. It's that you just make things up about people and you repeat them over and over and over again so that people just keep hearing it. And it doesn't matter that it's not true. And that's the whole strategy they've used with Hunter Biden. They're trying to make this story up because they haven't been able to get anything to stick on Biden. And so they just keep repeating. And then they make up this story. I mean, if you think of the story they told, it doesn't even make sense, right? That somehow Hunter Biden flies across the country with a laptop to have it fixed in New York, of all places, where he has no place. There's no reason for him to fly across the country to have it fixed. There's no reason for him to go to New York to have it fixed. There's no reason why, if the computer, had all this criminality on it, why he would even bring it in to get fixed. I mean, none of the story even makes sense from a logic standpoint. But even more importantly, none of those things ever happen. If there's anything on the laptop, it has nothing to do with the Bidens or any of these business allegations that they're trying to play with. And so I don't know if somebody got their hands on some kind of dirty laptop and they said, let's just use this as a prop. It doesn't even matter. The fact of the matter is Rudy Giuliani knows that this is complete garbage. And so he needs to face consequences for this. And anybody else that's pushing it needs to face consequences for this. This is not free speech. This is not political activity. When you blatantly make up stories like that and accuse people of criminality without knowing, it's not that you just got it wrong. It's knowing that it's a lie. That's not protected. And so, we can't allow this to become the new tactic that just becomes normal in future campaigns. This is not right. Now, if somebody gets into trouble and somebody wants to exploit it, so be it. That's people can like it or not like it, right? There's a lot of negativity in politics. Some people find it, problematic. Some people say it's part of life. If you don't like it, don't run. So again, that's an issue for debate. But this idea that you could just knowingly spread lies about people, first of all, shame on anybody who believes it, and more importantly, people who do it need to be held accountable for it. It's not funny.
Ken, anything to add to that?
Absolutely not. Other than the fact that I happen to agree with everything R Square said, but let's break this down. Just if I may go into detail, because someone gave me a very interesting breakdown. In order for you to believe there's any information of note on Hunter Biden's computer, this is what you have to believe. Hunter Biden, who lives in California, home of Silicon Valley, couldn't find a computer repair shop. Got on a plane, drunk. Flew all the way to New York City, drunk.
With a time change. Got his luggage, found this one place in New York City, and was still drunk when he got there. Gave it to this computer place. The videotape that tracks everybody coming and going magically got erased when he showed up. He then leaves the laptop there. Forgets about it. The owner of the laptop company is saying, well, since you abandoned it, I'm going to take the laptop, chooses not to erase the hard drive, but instead looks at the hard drives and downloads 1,500 pages of emails, which, by the way, is illegal. It's called, and then finds all this information, doesn't call the FBI, doesn't call the Department of Homeland Security. He calls Rudy Giuliani for whatever reason. And then Rudy Giuliani sits on it for almost 3 months. And then
of the vote here,
leaks it
about
to
135,000 votes remaining to come in from 600,000 basically reported out so far. Does that
Hold on.
They're just doing the county analysis. There's no
Yeah.
results. It's
Yeah.
just the county stuff.
Yeah, that's from 2020. Anyway, and then Giuliani doesn't bring it to the FBI or Department of Homeland Security. He leaks it to a couple of journalists. That's what you got to believe if you believe the story. Do you think there's a few problems with this?
There's a lot of problems with it. They just reported that Joe Biden has taken Vermont. So Vermont is Biden. So that's one for
So
Biden.
far, no surprises. We need some surprises or there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly. Also in the Trump troubles, President Trump's own former executives were speaking out against Donald Trump. They also put in their backing of Joe Biden in his run was Michael Cohen, Barbara Rez, and Jack O'Donnell. I do have a clip, but because we're now checking and keeping an eye on these numbers that are coming in, I'm going to bypass that clip because we are now in election time. So showing that clip to me,
we have time. There's nothing going on. They're just stalling until they get numbers. So don't worry about it.
Right, and they're not going to get numbers for another hour or so.
Let me pull up the clip here. It's a pretty interesting clip. It's about 6 minutes long. It's his former executives talking about him, and it's very funny. It's very eye-opening.
I want to just begin this segment here with the contrast specifically to Joe Biden. Each of you have links to Trump. In some ways, your lives might be easier to just not be out and around this week. Starting with Jack down the line, why specifically do you think Joe Biden is better than Trump for America now?
Well, it comes down to one simple thing for me, Ari, and that's race. The only way we're going to heal this country is with a man that understands and appreciates the diversity of this nation. I think Biden does. And I know for fact Donald Trump doesn't. He will never appreciate the diversity that has made this country great.
Yeah, and that's obviously, as so many Americans know, and living through this year and this era, so important. Barbara, similar question to you, and in the context of your brand new book, which as Beat fans were excited about, Tower of Lies, what you know of him that you document in the book and the contrast to Biden.
It's hard to say this because all politicians are basically dishonest, and they have to be. They have to pander to whoever they're talking to. I understand that. But comparison, Biden is honest. Biden doesn't cheat. Biden understands people. Biden cares about people. Trump cares about one thing and one thing only, and it's him and his money and his ego, that tremendous ego. Biden doesn't have that. As far as looking at what Trump did to our country and continues to do to our country today by filling up our Supreme Court with people that are going to violate the Constitution, he's a terror. He's a nightmare. So, Biden is good. Biden has the experience. Biden knows government, all those things. But I can't think of almost anyone that wouldn't be better than Trump.
Michael?
Yeah, look, I have to just add to what Jack and Barbara just said. Donald Trump cares for no one or anything other than himself. I've often said, and I said it in front of the House Oversight, he's a con man, he's a fraud, he's a racist. I've also stated he's a homophobe, Islamophobe, anti-Semite, sexist, misogynist. I mean, the notion that there's even a competition at this moment in our time, foreign policy, everything all across the board, the metrics favor Joe Biden over Donald Trump. And I really do believe, and I told you, I put my money where my mouth is, I believe that this is going to be a landslide victory for Joe Biden. I really do.
Well, I see Barbara crossing her fingers, and that again.
I don't want to hold back now for a second, Ari. I don't want to hold back at all. Is there anything else you want me to add to that mixture? I mean,
it's quite a list.
Seriously,
this is my follow-up to you, Michael. I think that Michael and then Barbara, you are some of the individuals who know Donald Trump best, and you say he is the worst. Michael,
well, he is.
Why is that? First, Michael, then Barbara.
He's just a gigantic baby who's gotten everything that he's wanted his entire life, the way that he wanted it. He's never had to take responsibility for any of his actions. Everybody else figured out, from Fred, his father, all the way down to myself. Everybody took responsibility, whether it's his dirty deeds or his malfeasance or his errors. It's always, look at the finger pointing that's going on right now in Washington, right? COVID, whether it's or the nonsense that's coming out of Jared Kushner's mouth now about, how black people don't want to be successful. The stupidity just rolls downhill. And Donald Trump will now, whether it's Mark Meadows or Jared, he will point the finger, and somebody, if it wasn't at the 7 days before he loses, somebody would have been fired today.
Barbara?
I watched him evolve, and I understand. I read Michael's book and Jack's, and I understand the relationship that each of them had. Mine was very, very different. I was there in the beginning, and the ego was somewhat under control. But the big difference was that he listened to people. He had very good people as opposed to now where he doesn't have such good people. And there's a reason for that. But he listened to people and he took their advice. And that's part of why he was successful. I think it's the whole part, actually. The only thing that he really did well was PR. He could PR better than anyone else in the world. But now I see, with the changes, and I watched this happen and sort of predicted it. I can see that, Michael had a much different relationship with Donald. In ways they were closer, but in ways Donald beat the hell out of him and didn't, with me. And, it's a changing thing. He's bad and he's worse and he's worse yet, but it was always there.
Jack?
Well, Ari, he's the worst and you haven't seen anything yet.
I feel, Jack, because I work in the news, I feel like I've seen something.
You've seen something, Ari, but I promise you 4 more years of him unleashed where he really doesn't have to pander to anybody, including the Republicans. I don't think people can really understand the chaos, the anarchy that this guy can cause. And I think that's what he's waiting for. It's who he is, at his core. He loves anarchy. And quite frankly, he doesn't like Republicans. And I think if he wins, you're going to see that very clearly.
And that's striking. And Michael's spoken bluntly about that. I'm running out of time. I'll do a final lightning round. If you wake up when the election results are in, whether it's that night, the next day, or days later, sometimes it takes longer to count, but when they come in and you find out that Donald Trump has lost, your feeling in a word or a sentence quickly, Jack?
Relief, Ari. I'll be relieved for our country. Very, very simple.
Barbara?
I'll start to believe again.
Michael?
Yeah, I'll be relieved as well. I think it's about time that the country needs to heal and that we can't do it with him as the captain of chaos.
All striking and really thoughtful ideas, analysis, and first-person experience, which voters then can see and listen to tonight and make up their own minds. But clearly, all of you have put something on the line for this. So we appreciate your time. Michael Cohen, Barbara Rez, Jack O'Donnell, exclusive panel only here on The Beat. We appreciate you. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.
Back on here. We are back here in the booth broadcasting live for the City of Champions. Thank you, George Bain. I see you in the chat. A lot of people in the chat tonight checking us out. We're going back and forth here with what we're doing. So we're trying to watch these numbers as they come in. It's still too early to call a lot of places right now, especially the crucial places. But Joe Biden has taken Vermont. He is the projected winner of Vermont. Some of these Senate races that we're keeping an eye on there, it's still too early for those two. And as we close this out, the only thing that I wanted to mention as we close out this Trump troubles topic, you guys saw Michael Cohen there, who was, he had nothing nice to say about Trump. I'm going to go around the horn here. R squared, Ken, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, he called him a captain of chaos, and I think he's totally right. And remember, Trump threw Michael Cohen under the bus. Michael Cohen was his consigliere and his fixer, and he totally abandoned Michael Cohen to the wolves, which is not surprising because Trump's a malignant narcissist who cares about nothing but himself. But yeah, this is nothing a lot of us knew about Trump, especially if you grew up in the New York metro area in the 80s. We saw this. I mean, all I can say is, well, nice of you to join the party. A little late.
Squid?
Yeah, I mean, look, Michael Cohen is not exactly a person of character. I mean, he did what he did knowingly, intentionally, and what have you. So, okay, it's great that he's being open about it now. He's accepted responsibility for it now. I don't doubt the veracity of the things he with his flaws, but that's not saying much.
That's like being the best hockey player in Bolivia.
Oh, he wasn't happy at all. He was very upset. As we close out the Trump troubles here, so we can get into this election as these numbers come in. The last thing I want to talk about is the court met with a couple of issues with ballot extensions, and one of the states was North Carolina, and they extended the ballot extension there where the GOP, Trump was trying to block it. They actually, it was the second time that they were trying to do this, and it was blocked. Let R Squared start off on this one. Like I said, Amy didn't vote on this one, which was great. She respectfully bowed out. She had just got her nomination, but she sat out of that vote, and rightfully she should. I'm going to let R Squared talk about that real quick.
We're talking about the confirmation?
No, not the confirmation. We're talking about this vote to extend the ballot extension in North Carolina.
Yeah. So listen, people are overreacting to it based on political affiliation. It's just like what we were talking about earlier, that it's not about politics. This is not about politics. This is about counting votes that were properly cast. This is not about keeping the polls open on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because people didn't go vote today. That's not what it's about. That would be wrong. But the law says that if you cast a ballot on time, then it's supposed to be counted. And so, if you, whatever method you use, every state or county authorizes various methods to vote, and people have a right to choose the one that makes the most sense for them, especially in this COVID situation that we have. You don't want everybody cramming into these places. So the fact of the matter is, as long as the votes were properly cast, by the time the polls close today, then they should be counted. And anybody that thinks that, that they should be using these kinds of tactics and arguments to just stop counting ballots despite the fact that they know that they were properly cast is wrong. That's not what a democracy is. That's not our history. Nobody has ever opposed that before. Campaigns never block people. They will challenge votes that were not properly cast. They will try to challenge procedures that were done wrong. They will challenge votes that may have been cast late. That's all fine. But that's not the issue here. There's not even an allegation that these votes weren't properly cast. And so it's just awful to see that this is, again, the next chapter of what we're doing. We're supposed to be trying to get people to vote. And here's the thing. If the courts or if the Republican Party wants to say that, we have to have instant results tonight and we can't keep counting even if the votes were cast on time, then you know what? Then spend the money, fix the machines, open more locations, and we'll get the vote counted on time. But you can't have it both ways. You can't close polling locations. You can't close resources. You can't not replace old machines. You can't do all these things resulting in long lines and these backups and then say, oh, and now we're not going to count it because you were late. It's not the voters' fault.
Right. Ken, you want to add on that?
Absolutely. And let's get a couple of things straight here.
My son just came in. He voted for his first time. So
yeah,
awesome.
Props.
Way to go.
He swung by the house to use the bathroom after he voted. But he voted. Love him.
There you go. Let's get things straight. How votes are counted. First of all, you have the individual municipalities count the votes. Then they go to the county level, and then from the county level, they go to the state level. In Massachusetts, most cities and towns have up to a week to report the results. And the state doesn't certify the results till after Thanksgiving. Massachusetts will not certify their results till around December 3rd, I think it's the first week in December. So this idea that we need to keep, and most states are like that because it takes time. You need to certify, the Secretary of State has to certify the results, and he or she will do it based on the reports from municipalities and counties. So this idea that we need to count the votes tonight is ridiculous because state law doesn't require you to do that. And remember, the electors don't elect the president till January. People actually voting for the president don't meet and vote till January. So this idea that we need to count the votes tonight is absolutely absurd. It's an artificial construct and only started recently because of the media, because the media had something to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It always has taken days to certify, to finish counting and certify. The projections that they make tonight are based on exit polling. They're not based on real numbers. And so we've never actually had official results. Never. It's not like this is a new problem. We've never had official results. It just may be that because of the issues being raised, that the media can't make their normal projections. They don't want to get it wrong. So we may not have a projection tonight, but projections have sometimes been wrong. So it's better to wait.
Look, I mean, the other thing is, I don't know if everybody remembers. I don't remember what election it was, but there was one election where they called the race before California had closed their polls.
Right.
And everybody screamed and yelled about that. And after that, all the media outlets would not call the election until California closed. No, 30 seconds after they closed, they'll call it. Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. So we've been through this before. I don't know how to say this. Well, what's that old saying? The only thing you don't know is the history you haven't read. And that's true. I mean, we've gone through. There's no, like I said, Donald Trump wants the election over as quickly as possible because he thinks he can get an advantage for the people who actually vote in person. Those are the ballots that get counted first, which is true. Here's the other thing. And Rob, as a former military officer, you probably have more experience than either Simpson or I. You probably voted when you were overseas, right?
Yes.
You mailed in your ballot, and I don't know if you actually go to a polling place or if you mail the ballot and you mail it back. I'm not
Always
sure
by
what the
mail.
procedure is.
Always by mail.
Okay. Under federal law, anyone in the military gets an additional week to get their ballot in if they're serving abroad. That's just military ballots. And that's why when they say this, we still got to count the military ballots. That's why, because they give it extra time for military personnel to cast their ballot. And remember, during the Civil War, do you know how many ballots had to be counted from people that were not in their home polling stations? That was before we had all this electronic nonsense and Federal Express and whatever. So this whole idea that we're going to count the ballot, no. Take a week. And with COVID, it may take longer because they don't have the personnel that you had before. So.
Well, that was that. I wanted to make sure you guys got that out there. That's actually our last topic for this evening because the numbers should be coming in fast and furious now. Hopefully, let's see. We're at the 7:31.
Well, we're not going to really start seeing.
Yeah,
some
we're probably not going to see anything. We'll probably be off before the real numbers come in. And to be honest, if you guys remember in 2016, me and Ken, we were on the air for 2016, and that wasn't even decided until like 1:20 in the morning when those Michigan votes came in and flipped that whole entire swing to Trump because Hillary was up and leading until that whole time. It was like somebody flicked the switch, and it was like 1:35 in the morning. Most people woke up to find out who the winner was. So this is probably going to go all the way into the night.
No, I don't think it'll go all of that. I don't think it'll be as late as that, but it's definitely going to go later.
The question is if he is going to project himself as the winner before everything is counted. Right. That's kind of what I want to see because Kylie McVeigh had already said, McKinney, she'd already said that he was going to announce victory if it was a landslide. But the thing is, you still got votes that's got to get counted. It wouldn't be a good idea.
I mean, Florida's neck and neck. Florida's less than a percentage point between Trump and Biden.
Yeah,
which should not be happening. Biden should be doing a lot better in Florida than he is. But apparently, as Rob says, he's not doing as good in Miami-Dade as he should be doing.
That's the only place he's underperforming. He's overperforming in most of the other counties where he's expected to do well. Mm-hmm. It's just Miami because of the Cuban vote, because they're angry about the the Obama Cuban policy, and so they hold that against him. He was part of the administration. He touted it, so.
But it still could go. It could still go either way. We don't know. Yeah.
I will be right back.
All right, I'm gonna actually pull up this feed coming in, courtesy of MSNBC and Xfinity. Just transfer over to show you guys what we're all watching here on MSNBC. George Bain, what's going on? We came on early. We wanted to make sure that we got in early just in case anything did happen. But it looks like we're on the air. We're going to be winding down in a sec. And I might pop on and do a live once these real numbers. But again, right now they're really focused on Florida. South Carolina right now, Only 1% of the votes are in, but right now Trump is in the lead. Right now, like I said, the only state that he's been the projected winner in is Joe Biden was Vermont so far. Right
Vermont,
now.
yeah, and I'm seeing Indiana here.
So
I'm seeing pretty much everyone's agree. Indiana, yeah, I'm looking at MSNBC, so Indiana's going for Trump, which wasn't a surprise.
Yeah. So we'll see how these numbers are. I've got the sound actually off on this, so I don't.
I've actually got I got on computer. I got MSNBC page opened up, and I've got CNN in the background.
Yeah, I'm counting down to 30 seconds, and then I'm switching it off and transitioning out and bringing us back in, so you guys can see us and keep this going. It is 7:35, and I want to thank everybody who's called into this show tonight and hung out with us. And regardless of what happened, I hope everybody did go out and vote. The Lincoln Project, I got to give them a shout out. The Lincoln Project has put out some great videos in regards to this campaign run. Also, Republicans voting against Trump has been great. Also, putting out some great videos as far as promoting voting for Joe Biden. But we'll see here. Florida is still looking pretty close.
Right.
The counties are still being counted, and as R Squared said, if whoever takes Florida, it's going to be a wrap, and that's what R Squared is kind of predicting.
I'm not so sure. I mean, that's I'm not so sure Florida is really in play. I hope to God it doesn't come down to another hanging Chad like it did the last time. So right now, MSNBC is reporting that South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia are too early to call. Right now, it's Biden 3, Trump 11, as we are going on here. It's just too close to call for Florida. Biden is now back on top of this. But Florida's not going to be called for a while. Florida's going to go back and forth.
Fast and furious. The Senate at this hour, it's also close. Democrats are, right now, the Democrats are in the lead for taking the Senate at 35-30. So we'll see as these numbers come in. Only 4% of the Senate votes are in.
Yeah,
so
you can't. That's weight. You need at least 30.
Still too early to tell. Senate control, if you're trying to keep count, the Democrats need to take 4 seats. Now, here's the problem here, people, if you're watching with us. The problem is also not if Donald Trump gets reelected. If Donald Trump gets reelected and the Senate is taken over by the Democrats, here's where this hypocrisy thing is kicking in again. Because the Democrats, if they take over and gain the majority of the Senate and Congress, we're going to be back to where we were in the first term of Obama, when the Republicans had everything and they just dug their heels in and forced Obama to take that second term and start vetoing everything and using his veto powers. So that's what we got to worry about here. Even if Trump does get back in, if the Democrats take it, you know what's going to happen. The Democrats are going to be hypocrites, and they're going to make sure he gets absolutely nothing done in this second term. And who loses?
Well, the question is here's the thing.
We lose, but at the end of the day,
Here's the thing: is if that happens, is always remember impeachment rears its ugly head again.
But how? How is that?
Well, I mean, all the things he's done since the first impeachment.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, it would have to be since this election. But I mean, it doesn't have to be. But in fairness, it would have to be.
But we're not playing. Again, those are old rules. Those are old rules.
I get it, but we don't want to create the new norms that we're going to regret. And trust me,
I think they already have.
Yeah, but trust me, he's going to commit new misconduct anyway. So we might as well do it the right way and avoid that issue, and don't give Republicans a chance to make a stink out of it.
See, bingo.
Oh, that's good. A good point.
Bingo.
But I think the Republicans have already created the new normal.
No, they have, and I think we need to get rid of them, not perfect them.
Right.
And the funny thing is about this whole Republican Democrat thing is when we go back and I get into debates with people about, this show being one of the first to announce about President Trump. And one of the things we talked about on this show when we first announced it was the week that Prince had died. It was in April. I was in New York on a friggin', I think I was actually in the gym riding a bike in the gym in New York. And when it came up, I hit Ken. Ken was the first person I talked to about it. And we spoke. And, and one of the things when Trump was announced running for presidency, every Republican hated the idea of him representing the Republican Party. Because why? Because they felt he was too Democrat. And they fought him. He pretty much had them forced. He pretty much forced that nomination down their throats. They didn't even want to. And the sad thing was Reese Priebus, who hated Donald Trump during that whole entire campaign run, took a job on his staff after he hated. He wanted to step down. That's how much they hated Donald Trump in the Republican Party for representing them. So people forget that he wasn't liked. They didn't even want. For those who think that the Republicans want him, they didn't want him. They didn't want him at all. They didn't want him to represent it. He was forced down their throats at the absolute clock ticking of midnight. It was like November that they finally announced that he was going to be their guy. It was like, early October. First of all, it was like early October, mid-October.
Remember, Sinister One. The odds-on favorites was, and this I can't believe we're saying this, but Jeb Bush was the odds-on favorite to get the nomination, and he was going to go up against Hillary Clinton. It was supposed to be a rematch of Clinton-Bush from '92. That's what everyone was suggesting was happening. All the pundits, all the people in the know, thought that was going to happen. And I think Bush made it through 3 primary states before he pulled out.
Yeah. And so, like I said, Trump pretty much forced that nomination. And like I said, even me.
And he didn't want it. And he didn't want the nomination.
Even me, for that first year, I felt he didn't even want this presidency. I felt he was going to do whatever he could to get out of it.
Oh, he definitely didn't want it.
And I felt that for like the first year and a half. I felt like he's going to do everything he wants because he really didn't want it. He loved running his business the way it was. And, that's how it is. We are at 7:41. And, again, I just hope a lot of people went out and voted. I see a lot of people on social media with their stickers and stuff. It was funny. I pre-voted. I went and I voted at the Downey School, and I've done it since I was 18 and had the right to vote. So I decided when this mail-in ballot thing, was being debated, I knew it had been out there for a long time, but I said, let me check the system out. Let me see how it is. I requested my ballot. I got my ballot on a Tuesday, dropped it off on Saturday. My vote was, received, and it said it was to be counted within a couple of days. So now it's sitting in Track My Ballot saying that it's still waiting to be counted. So that means it should have an answer for it by tomorrow as if it was counted or not. Yeah. But the thing is I just wanted to show and prove that the system does work. It's not flawed like they were trying to say.
Right.
And the other thing is that, they set up these areas for people to go vote, early vote. Fenway Park set it up so people could get some Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and they went in droves. And we're seeing right now, irregardless of how this goes, this is a historic vote because people turned out to vote this time around. When we headed into this show today, 120 million ballots have been turned in for early voting. That's never happened before. They were at 60-something% of the 2016 election more. It was crazy. And I think that's not going to go anywhere. I think this is here to stay. This early voting is here to stay.
Oh, there's no question about it. Early voting is here to stay. We saw it we actually saw it in 2016 early voting. We saw it in 28. I remember I was down in Florida doing voter protection for Obama in 2008, and they were doing early voting. I mean, it's just a good thing to do. I voted absentee. Well, I'm not sure it was absentee. I got my ballot ahead of time, and then I dropped it off at a ballot box, so those ballot mailboxes that they had, because I thought I was going to do voter protection. Turned out I wasn't needed. But, yeah, again, this idea of voting on an election day is a new construct. You got to remember, back in colonial times, they voted when they had opportunities, and not every community voted on the same day. You voted when you had the people around. There was deadlines and when the votes had to be counted. That's the difference,
right?
Not when they actually.
And right now, it's still just those 2 states that are projected winners. Indiana with the 11 electoral votes is Trump. Vermont, 3 electoral votes for Biden. Right now, that's it. Those are the only 2 states where the winners have been announced. Other than that, we're still waiting.
Right. We're still waiting. There's another 15 minutes before there's polls close, and then a bunch of the Midwestern states will, of course, close at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, I believe, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Is that correct, Rob? Did I get that right?
8 p.m. is 7 p.m. Mountain Time. 8 p.m. Central is 7 p.m. Mountain Time.
Okay, but at 9 p.m., the 9 p.m.
the 7 p.m. Mountain Times, but I don't know if they close at 7.
Okay.
Thomas McGinty, who lives in New Hampshire, he said Massachusetts tried to mail him a ballot. That's because he's probably still listed somewhere. He might have registered a license or something somewhere, which is why he received a ballot. To be honest, some people think that they may have received a ballot, but I thought I had to request my ballot.
You have to request it. Well, no, what he got, what he got was, and this is what people don't understand.
Yes.
The secretary, if the Secretary of State's office believes you're living abroad, you're a mass resident living in Australia, they will send you the form to request an absentee ballot. That's what he got. He didn't get the ballot.
Yeah, and I saw some people complain about some stuff, and I'm like, well, that's your fault because you didn't fill out the census report or the voter report that comes to your house. You just threw it away and tossed it away, or else you would be updated. I mean, I'm a stickler. I'm anal about that stuff. When the city sends those things out,
right?
My mom passed away 2 years ago. And when the voter thing came to the house and my mom was listed, I had to put her as deceased. And that's exactly what you're supposed to do. When the census form came out for this year and my mother was on the census form, I had to put down that she's deceased. Everybody says, well, Social Security or somebody should be taking care of that. No, it's your responsibility to list when the loved one has passed away. And people don't get it. It drives me up a wall at how important filling out a census is, and online it's even more important. Here in Brockton, a great example with the census and people not filling out the census. Your census is filled out. It says that you have 3,000 kids in the school system because only so many people filled out the census forms, and then the state allows this much money budget towards the school because the census says that we have 3,000 kids in the Brockton school system. But then on September and August, all these people who didn't fill out their census reports, they go down and register their kids in the school department, and now you've got 4,000 more kids entering school, and you've only been budgeted for those 3,000. And people say, well, that's not my fault. Yes,
it is. It is.
It is your fault because you didn't fill out the census form so they could properly disperse the fundings for school. If you're a representative for the state of Massachusetts and you're fighting for money for the school department, and you're saying, well, we've got this many people, and the first thing they're going to say to you at City Hall, whatever it is, or at the State House is, well, the census says we only have this many people living here. I don't know. R-squared, I see you shaking your head.
That's exactly right. There's no excuse to not fill these things out and then complain about it. I mean, there's only so many ways we can verify the population to divide up limited amount of resources based on, population and other demographic considerations, sources of income levels, whatever they're using for different programs. And, if people ignore those opportunities, then what are you supposed to do? We're supposed to guess?
Right. Oh, actually, Tom McGinty's in our chat. He said he was listed inactive and ineligible to vote, even though he did get that thing to request the ballot.
There you go.
Done. And he said he fills out his census. So everything did work out the way that it was supposed to. And Massachusetts had him listed as ineligible to vote, so that's a good thing. So it did work out the way it was because he filled out his census. And again, filling out that census is key. People think it's a bothersome thing, and it's like it's not. This is how states are given money.
It took me less than a minute.
Yeah.
All you do is verify your information, your contact information, and how many people live in your house. I mean, it literally took me less than a minute.
Yeah.
I did it online.
Yep. And it's one of these things now where, I did mine online. So they don't even really have to send people door to door no more. It's done online. It was quick, click, and done. Again, you're only hurting yourself when you don't fill these things out. So, Ken, isn't there these census things? Isn't that when it comes to the court system, as how these monies are also dispersed, as far as court-appointed attorneys and things like that? Is that also played in there? That census to the areas?
To a certain extent, yes. CPCS, who is the agency that deals with that issue, they're a state agency, so they had X amount of dollars for the entire state. How they allocate it within their internal thing, giving certain counties more money based on population.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really affect their budget, and more of an internal thing. And once they get the money, they can move money around a lot easier as they deem necessary. But absolutely, you need because CPS will allocate funds and staff and resources based on census data.
Mm.
So,
Tom
yeah.
McGinty said, his point was just the fact that they sent it knowing where he was and that he couldn't vote.
Well, I mean, there are people who live in other states who are residents, Rob. Rob was a resident while he was in the military of Massachusetts, right, Rob?
No, Florida.
No, you were Florida? Okay, all the time in the military.
After about the first couple of years.
Yeah. So, but the point is, even though you weren't physically in Florida, you deemed to be a Florida resident.
Right. I don't have to change my residency because I'm in the military. If you're not in the military, you have to change your residency when you move somewhere.
Exactly. But that's my point. So you voted in the Florida elections, although you may have been at Fort Lewis. Was that in Washington?
Yeah. I always voted Florida by mail. I mean, it's very easy in Florida to vote by mail, so.
Droopy's trying to get my attention here.
So I'm looking.
I'm looking. They're looking at Ohio right now on MSNBC. Still,
Florida's
again,
neck
too
and
early
neck.
to count. Yeah, Georgia is still close. Only 7% is in. So yeah, this is gonna go later. We're gonna probably be off.
Ohio. This is interesting. Ohio's got 18% in, but Biden's got a nice lead in Ohio. And all right, which one of us wants to say it?
What?
Can I say it?
Go
no
ahead.
Republican has won the presidency without winning Ohio, and only one Democrat has won the presidency without winning Ohio, and that was JFK. Someone's got to say that during every election cycle.
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it.
And no Republican has won without Florida since Coolidge.
Really?
Yeah.
That I did not know.
Coolidge was the last Republican to win without winning Florida.
That's interesting.
All right, we're at 7:52, so we're going to get ready to close this out. And us guys are probably going to go sit in front of our TVs and watch this election as it rolls through. But again, I got to thank everybody for tuning into the booth and coming into the chat and hanging out with us. We came on an hour extra early to talk some stuff about this election. Again, R Squared has said it best. It's your civic duty. You got to get out there and vote, irregardless of your points or who you think you're voting for. If you go out and vote, that's the best thing that you can do, and nobody can hold it against you. My thing is I was glad to see the amount of people. I went down today to see people voting. Like I said, I had already voted early, but the turnout was nice. It was nice to see the turnout in the Brockton area. It was nice to see the people of color turning out to vote, which has been categorically horrible, statistically horrible.
That's been one of your pet peeves for years.
It's been my pet peeve. Like I said, in 2016, it was 1% here in the state voted and 14% nationwide. That's nothing to brag about at all. Now I'm curious to see if the black people come out and vote this election and who they vote for. Again, that platinum plan that President Trump had announced, it was nice. It was a nice carrot to dangle. But for me, I'm a voter. I read it, and there wasn't much in there. There was no proof as to how he was going to provide this money, and I knew
it was a concept, not a plan.
Yeah,
all it was
yeah.
was an idea.
Yeah.
It was not. I mean, it wasn't intended to be a plan. He called it a plan because he called out on it during the 60 Minutes interview. But that's not a plan. That was a concept idea that somebody would build into a plan if they went with it.
And I felt like,
and maybe they are, but
and
it
the
doesn't
way I
exist
also
now.
felt like it, and I said, at the end of the day, the way he discussed it, I'm already familiar with that. And we call it gentrification, because the problem is you sink that money into those neighborhoods, and what happens is what happened to South Boston, what happened to Mission Hill, what happened to Forest Hills, what happened to Back Bay, what has happened down in Eggleston Square. You come in and you sink all that money into those areas, the property values go up to the point where the people can't afford to live there.
Absolutely.
And then what happens is they can't afford to live there. You have a mom and pop store who's been struggling for years. They get this money. Now some other person comes in, some investor, and says, hey, the property value is low. I'm going to give you $1.5 million for this corner store. And this mom and pop has been in this business for 50-something years. They're ready to retire. Guess what? They're going to do like 90% of the people in South Boston did. They're going to sell to the point where you can't even recognize Southie. That's gentrification at its best.
Yeah. Look, there was a community in New Jersey called Hoboken, where I
Good
grew
example.
up in Jersey in the 80s. And what was interesting about Hoboken was the terminus of most of the railroads from northern Jersey that terminated there, and there was the path tubes that took you into downtown Manhattan. So, but other than that, it was a freaking war zone. It was Fallujah. I wouldn't leave the train terminal for all the tea in China. In the mid 80s, they did a huge gentrification project, and they turned it around, and now it's yuppie haven. You wouldn't recognize Hoboken if you grew up there. But here's the problem. Hoboken had a very strong working class community up until the 70s. And they went downhill, and they brought it back. And the idea was they're going to bring Hoboken back, and they're going to revitalize the community. Well, none of the working families can afford to live there anymore, because houses that were going for like maybe $10,000, $20,000 now we're going for $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. I mean, I understand. You bring it back. You want to bring it back, and that's great. But what do you do about the displacement? How do you bring it back where we get affordable housing, affordable rents for businesses?
We do
How
that.
do we do that?
We do that in Florida by making development contingent on, and we don't do a good job of it, but it's the process that we're supposed to use, and some places do better than others. It's a big issue where I live, and we're holding our city commission accountable for it right now. It's how we defeated an incumbent last year, if you remember, on this issue. But the issue is that when we have developers who are looking to put up the good stuff, the commercial stuff, the nicer homes and condos and what have you, we also insist that a certain percentage of projects include workforce housing, affordable housing, not low income, not tenements, not projects, but just affordable housing, so people who work for a living, the people who work here can afford to live here. And so we have a certain percentage that we expect, and we enforce that developers have to build that as well if they want to build the other things. We need to do a little bit better about it. We're lopsided, but that's how we do it.
Tom McGinty actually lives in New Hampshire. I don't know if he is hearing what's going on there, but Joe Biden has just tweeted and Hillary Clinton has just retweeted. They're saying, New Hampshire, if you are waiting at the polls, stay in line, !
That's
If
right.
you're in line, you are guaranteed your right to vote.
That's
and they're
correct,
asking
right.
everyone to retweet to spread the word. So it looks like there is an issue in New Hampshire, and they're telling people to stay in line, even though the polls close at 8 o'clock there. As long as you're in line, you have to be allowed to vote. So
that's right.
Anybody who is in New Hampshire, please make sure to retweet this so people can see it, to let them know you got to stay in line. I know it's cold and it's bad. The temperature is dropped because the sun's gone down, but you got to stay in line and get your vote in. We're at 7:58, 2 minutes to go. Yeah, it must be a big deal. Kamala Harris, she just retweeted this. Do not get discouraged. They must let you vote.
Right.
They're now
what happens, I actually have done
Go
this
ahead.
before.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they do is they actually will find the end of the line and they usually station a police officer or an election official with that last person.
Yeah.
And they're basically, or they give that last person a popsicle stick or something like that to mark it. They mark that last person and says, I believe they close at 8:00 and they'll send an election worker out there. Because I know I did voter protection in 2004 for the Kerry campaign. I remember that was one of our big sticking points is we were actually allowed to go out there. We couldn't say anything. We couldn't talk to the people. We could observe them doing it. And they actually sent out a police officer who, had a radio and says, okay, whoever the last person on line, mark them. And the guy the police officer gave the guy a vest, one of those reflective vests, which said last voter on it. And he was the person. So when they knew when they knew the guy walked through the door, they could shut everything down. And they actually did that. And it took us another half hour to get through all the people at the polling station I was in. And the guy, it was one guy, he was like really nervous. He said, no. And the cop was very honest. He said, no, sir. You were online. I'll make sure you vote. And the cop stood with them until he actually voted. And I remember he got in and we were there and the guy was actually the last guy to vote and he was very happy and handed the vest and that was it. And then we shut down the polling place. But it was I think 8:29 or 8:30 was a half hour late. But they did it.
Sorry about that. I was having puppy problems in the background.
Okay, it looks like they're calling Massachusetts for Joe Biden. Big surprise. Maryland for Biden. That's a good win.
He said we run it fast and lose up Tom McGinty.
Delaware, big surprise.
So 8 p.m. MSNBC is now showing this before we go off the air. 8 p.m. poll closing.
District of Columbia.
Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, and there was 3 other states, but those polls will close at 8 p.m.
Right.
Florida is
Oklahoma
still
for
too close
Trump
to
now.
call.
Yeah, so far none of these are surprises or even expected to be closed.
Well, no, it's interesting. 8 p.m. closings. The Alabama, Florida. Well, that's right. Well, that's Mississippi's too close to call. That's interesting.
It's not too close to call. They don't have the numbers yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trust me, it's not too close to call. Those are. There's no chance that Trump doesn't win those.
Looks
states.
like Biden took Massachusetts. That will give him 11 electoral votes. Maryland he took. That will give him 10 electoral votes. Projected winner for Oklahoma is Donald Trump. That's 7 electoral. Delaware gives Biden will give Biden 3, and District of Columbia.
I'm looking at CNN. Biden is up. They got Biden up in Ohio with 28% of the vote. Well, he hit the magical number is 30. I am told he can start actually doing some decent ones. Georgia with 10, but that's virtually a dead heat, so screw that.
Yeah, so it's too early to call in the
New Hampshire, it's 5% in. Oh my God, the Hampshire, they're calling New Hampshire only 5% in. That's interesting.
Because it's all based on exit polling, and they have confidence in their numbers.
Yeah. So, guys, we're at 8 o'clock. I'm going to go around the horn and say our goodbyes here. I'm going to let Ken Diesel go first.
Okay, I want to thank all of our listeners, all 12 of them. And a big shout out to my nephew Abraham, who voted for the first time in his life today with his mom, my sister-in-law Cindy Thomas. Way to go, guys! And for all of you out there, just remember, it might be a divided election. We're still one country. Let's keep the faith. Let's bring it together.
Yep. R-squared.
Yeah, it's an exciting night, especially if you're a politics junkie, to see how it all shapes out. And we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to come together when this is done and figure out what needs to happen. We have a lot to do.
Yeah. So again, I got to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, we need people to make sure that they vote. You got to go get in line. The polls close at 8. If you're there before the polls close, you will be able to get your vote in and get heard. But again, people, there's not much I want to say tonight other than vote. And please, irregardless of who wins, let's keep it peaceful. There's no need to tear cities apart and stuff because you're not happy with who won. It doesn't solve anything. Because like I said, again, even if he wins, this isn't over because, again, if the Democrats take the House and stuff, they're going to be hypocrites. I'm already predicting that they'll be hypocrites and dig their heels in and make him fight on everything. For those who are in New Hampshire, again, stay in line. Somebody has posted voter protection hotlines. If you're having some issues, make sure you call. But we'll see. Again, I got to thank everybody for tuning into the booth, hanging out with us, checking us out, commenting, and showing us support and love. But, guys, I'm going to let SpongeBob do what he does best. Get us out of here. Take us home. And, again, thank you all for supporting the booth. We'll be back next week. Peace.
Well, see you next Tuesday. Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I made this on repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip. I don't need that shit, I got my own now.